Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a truly bizarre and terrifying chapter of medieval history. A phenomenon so strange that it sounds like something straight out of a horror film. Imagine a world gripped by an uncontrollable urge, a relentless rhythm that commanded bodies to move until they literally collapsed. You find yourself in the crowded, muddy streets of a bustling European town in the summer of 1518. The air is thick with the smells of horse dung, stale ale, and wood smoke. Vendors hawk their wares, children chase pigeons, and the general cacophony of daily life fills the air. You probably wouldn't survive a single day in this era, let alone what's about to unfold. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Comment your city and local time. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're observing the usual chaos when your attention is caught by a solitary figure, a woman. Her name is Frau Trophäa. She stands alone in the marketplace, her eyes wide and unfocused, her feet beginning a strange, jerky movement. It starts subtly, a mere twitch, a shuffle. But quickly, it intensifies. She's not dancing with joy. There's no music, no celebration. Her movements are erratic, almost violent, as if an unseen force pulls at her limbs. Her face is a mask of distress, sweat already beading on her forehead despite the cool morning air. This is the very beginning of what history would remember as the Dancing Plague. It's a well-known historical event, though its true causes remain shrouded in mystery. In the sweltering heat of that July, she dances, and she doesn't stop. A unique element to this particular outbreak, unlike others recorded, was its sheer intensity and the lack of an obvious initial trigger like a feast or religious procession. It simply began. The townspeople, initially curious, gather in a hesitant circle. Whispers ripple through the crowd. Some laugh nervously, thinking it a drunken performance or a strange street act. Others look on with dawning apprehension. You watch as her movements become more frantic, her breathing ragged. She is clearly not in control. Her dance is not graceful. It is a desperate, involuntary struggle against an invisible tormentor. Her arms flail, her feet pound the cobblestones. A relentless rhythm echoing in the sudden quiet of the marketplace. No one dares approach her. The normal hustle and bustle of the market slowly grinds to a halt. The air itself seems to grow heavier, charged with an unsettling energy. You can feel the collective unease, the shared confusion turning slowly to fear. The woman dances on, a lone, desperate figure, pulling you and everyone else into a bizarre, terrifying story that is just beginning to unfold. Her shadow stretches long and distorted on the dusty ground as the sun climbs higher, a silent testament to the horror that has just taken its first, shaky steps. The single, frantic dancer becomes two. A man, drawn by an invisible compulsion, begins to mimic Frau Trophäa's jerky, desperate movements. Then another joins, and another, until a small, unsettling cluster of individuals are all caught in the same rhythmic throes. You watch, horrified, as the bizarre contagion spreads. It's not a joyous dance, nor a measured ritual. It's a desperate, uncontrolled flailing, a grotesque ballet of suffering that ripples outwards from the marketplace. The initial confusion in the crowd rapidly dissolves into alarm. People step back, creating a wider circle around the growing group of involuntary performers. Their faces, once filled with curiosity, are now etched with fear and dawning comprehension. The low, guttural chanting from the masked figures has been replaced by the relentless thud of feet on cobblestones, the ragged gasps of the dancers, and the occasional sharp cry of distress. The sounds are hypnotic, unsettling, a soundtrack to an unfolding nightmare. A common feature of mass psychogenic illnesses, though not always as physically demanding as the dancing plague, is how quickly they can spread through a population, often exacerbated by fear and shared anxiety. The power of suggestion in a tightly knit community can be immense. One fascinating, if somewhat grim, aspect noted in historical accounts of similar phenomena is the tendency for onlookers to initially believe the afflicted are possessed by demons or under the influence of black magic, rather than suffering from a physical or psychological ailment. You can see it in the wide, superstitious eyes of some villagers, their hands clutching religious amulets. The authorities, initially baffled, try to intervene. Local magistrates and town elders approach the dancers, attempting to reason with them, to physically halt their movements. But it's futile. The dancers resist, their eyes glazed over, their bodies seemingly impervious to commands. When forcibly restrained, they only writhe and struggle more violently, their feet still twitching to the unseen beat. It's as if their very souls are compelled to continue. Days bleed into nights, and the number of dancers swells. Shopkeepers abandon their stalls. Farmers leave their fields untended. The ordinary rhythm of life in the town shatters, replaced by the relentless, terrifying cadence of the dancing plague. More and more people succumb, some willingly, drawn by a strange, irresistible force, others seemingly against their will, their faces mirroring the same anguished compulsion. You see men and women of all ages, from sturdy laborers to frail grandmothers, all united in this bizarre, exhausting torment. The streets, once bustling with commerce, are now filled with a swirling vortex of humanity, each person trapped in their own private yet terrifyingly public dance towards an unknown end. The air itself seems to vibrate with the collective effort, a growing, unstoppable rhythmic tide that threatens to engulf the entire town. As the hours bled into days, the dancing became a horrifying spectacle of endurance. You see men and women, once robust, now hollow-eyed and gaunt, their clothing tattered, stained with sweat and the grime of the cobblestones. There's no rest, no respite. If a dancer collapses from exhaustion, others inadvertently trip over them, or worse, keep dancing around their inert forms until they are pulled away by frightened onlookers. The town's normal functions have completely ceased. Bakers no longer bake, blacksmiths no longer hammer. All attention, all energy is consumed by this bizarre, terrifying phenomenon. The sun beats down relentlessly, then rain lashes down, turning the streets to slick mud. Yet the dancers continue. Their movements, initially varied, begin to meld into a desperate, universal rhythm, a collective agony expressed through involuntary motion. Their breathing is shallow, ragged, punctuated by guttural moans and the occasional unsettling shriek. Some tear at their own clothes, others claw at their faces, their nails leaving raw streaks on their cheeks. It's a torment that goes beyond physical exhaustion, reaching into the depths of their minds. A defining characteristic of the dancing plague, unlike some other historical hysterical outbreaks, was the extreme physical exertion and its often fatal consequences. Many victims died from heart attacks, strokes, or sheer exhaustion. An even more disturbing detail from some accounts suggests that a few dancers, in their delirium, exhibited an unnatural strength or insensitivity to pain, even when collapsing or injuring themselves. further mystifying witnesses. You see a dancer stumble, fall hard on their knees, but immediately try to push back up, their legs still twitching, their eyes unseeing. Attempts to bring food or water to the afflicted are largely futile. They cannot stop moving long enough to eat or drink properly. What little sustenance they manage to ingest is quickly expelled by their continuous, violent exertions. The air around them grows heavy with the stench of unwashed bodies, feverish sweat, and desperation. The sound of their pounding feet and strained breathing becomes a constant, maddening drone that permeates the entire town, leaving no one untouched by its eerie presence. You observe the onlookers, too. Many are pale with fear, some weep openly, others simply stare with blank, traumatized expressions. They are helpless, forced to witness this prolonged, agonizing death dance. There's a growing sense of dread, a feeling that the very fabric of their world is unraveling. The dancers are no longer individuals. They are a single, monstrous entity, a swirling vortex of human suffering that threatens to drag everyone into its relentless, unstoppable whirl. The lines between day and night blur, marked only by the shifting light on their tormented faces. With the number of afflicted swelling into the hundreds, panic gripped the town. The local authorities, utterly out of their depth, turned to the physicians and healers. You witness their bewildered attempts to make sense of this horrifying malady. Elderly doctors, their faces etched with worry, consult ancient texts, their fingers tracing Latin phrases about melancholia and humors. They examine the dancers, cautiously approaching the swirling mass of bodies, trying to feel pulses that throb erratically, listening to strained breathing. The prevailing medical theory of the time, the humoral theory, suggested that illness was caused by an imbalance of the four bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Physicians, armed with this understanding, proposed various remedies. They administered bitter concoctions, hoping to purge excess bile, or prescribed calming herbs to soothe agitated spirits. Some even attempted bloodletting, believing that draining bad blood would restore balance. These desperate measures, however, proved utterly useless against the relentless compulsion that drove the dancers. A strange, almost fringe belief held by some practitioners was that the dancing was a form of hot blood fever that could be cured by vigorous cooling. You might see them attempting to douse dancers with buckets of cold well water, only to watch the afflicted continue their jig, now dripping wet. As the traditional remedies failed, frustration mounted. The physicians, usually respected figures, found their authority crumbling in the face of this inexplicable plague. They argued amongst themselves, their voices growing shriller with each failed attempt. Some suggested that the dancers were deliberately feigning illness, though the sheer agony on their faces, the raw sores on their feet, quickly disproved such callous claims. Others muttered about demonic influence, a diagnosis that pushed the problem beyond the realm of medicine and into the domain of the church. You see a group of doctors, cloaked in dark, heavy robes, gathered around a writhing dancer, their faces pale with despair. One tries to hold a pungent-smelling salts beneath a dancer's nose, but the dancer merely thrashes their head away, never breaking rhythm. The air in the impromptu treatment areas, often just crowded streets where a dancer had briefly collapsed, is thick with the metallic smell of blood from scraped knees and elbows, mingled with the earthy scent of medicinal herbs. The inability of the medical community to offer any relief only amplified the town's terror. This wasn't a fever they could break, or a wound they could mend. It was something entirely new, something that defied all their learned knowledge. Their instruments lay useless. Their tinctures went untasted. The dancers continued their terrifying performance, oblivious to the desperate, impotent efforts of those sworn to heal them, pushing them closer to the abyss of total collapse. The medical mystery only deepened the collective horror, leaving the townspeople feeling utterly abandoned to this bewildering and deadly spectacle. With medicine failing, the town's desperate gaze turned to the heavens. You witness the solemn procession of priests, robed in black, emerging from the grand cathedral. Their faces are grim, their voices hushed, as they lead the terrified populace in fervent prayers. This plague, they declared, must be divine retribution, a punishment for sins known and unknown. The Church, as a cornerstone of medieval society, held immense power and offered the only solace in times of inexplicable crisis. Great, elaborate religious ceremonies commenced. You see priests raising ornate crucifixes, swinging heavy thuribles filled with pungent incense, its smoke curling upwards into the oppressive air. They intone Latin exorcisms, their voices echoing over the relentless thud of dancing feet. Holy water is liberally sprinkled, not just on the suffering dancers, but on the bewildered onlookers and the very cobblestones of the street, in a desperate attempt to cleanse the town of its unseen affliction. A prominent feature of medieval life was the deep-seated belief in divine intervention and the efficacy of prayer and sacred rites to ward off evil and disease. When earthly solutions failed, the spiritual realm was the only recourse. A lesser-known, yet disturbing detail from some accounts of the dancing plague is the practice of pious frauds during these religious interventions. There were instances where individuals, perhaps overwhelmed by the fervor or hoping for a miracle, would feign being cured or even join the dancing in a controlled, holy manner, only to later collapse from exhaustion, further blurring the lines between genuine affliction and performative piety. The dancers, however, remained unresponsive to the spiritual pleas. They danced through the prayers, through the blessings, through the exorcisms. Their eyes, though sometimes rolling in their sockets, seemed blind to the sacred symbols, deaf to the holy words. The relentless rhythm continued, a mocking counterpoint to the desperate hymns and supplications. The priests, initially confident in their spiritual authority, slowly began to show signs of despair. Their voices grew hoarse, their movements less assured. You see a young priest, his face pale and streaked with tears, clutching a heavy wooden rosary, muttering desperate prayers over a woman who thrashes wildly on the ground, her limbs still twitching. The contrast is stark. The calm, ordered ritual of the Church against the chaotic, uncontrollable frenzy of the plague. The failure of the Church's interventions only deepened the town's collective despair, stripping away their last bastion of hope. If God Himself would not intervene, what hope was there? The air, thick with the scent of incense and desperation, felt heavy, as if even the heavens had turned their backs on the afflicted town. With prayers and medicine proving futile, the town's magistrates, desperate for a solution, made a radical decision. You observe as preparations begin to transport the most severely afflicted dancers out of the city, to the shrine of Saint Vitus. This was a last, desperate gamble, a journey of hope born from sheer hopelessness. Saint Vitus, a Christian martyr, was believed to have power over nervous disorders and conditions involving involuntary movements, making his shrine a logical, albeit distant, destination for a miraculous cure. You watch as the roads leading out of the city are prepared. Rough carts are pulled into service, their wooden wheels groaning under the strain. Townspeople, their faces a mix of fear and grim determination, try to assist the suffering, gently guiding them towards the waiting conveyances. The dancers, however, continue their relentless movements even as they are lifted and jostled into the carts, their bodies still jerking to an internal, unheard rhythm. The scene is chaotic, heartbreaking, and deeply unsettling. A significant aspect of medieval pilgrimages, especially to shrines of saints believed to cure specific ailments, was the collective belief in a holy power that transcended earthly limitations. The journey itself was often seen as an act of penance and faith, enhancing the likelihood of a miracle. One particularly harrowing, though perhaps less known, detail about these desperate pilgrimages during outbreaks like the Dancing Plague was the high mortality rate during the journey itself. Many afflicted individuals, already weakened by days of continuous exertion, succumbed to exhaustion, hunger, or exposure on the arduous road to the shrine. You can almost feel the chill of the morning air and the gnawing ache of hunger as you imagine the long journey ahead. As the procession slowly leaves the town, the sounds of the dancing diminish, replaced by the creak of cartwheels and the occasional wail of a suffering dancer. The landscape changes from the grimy streets to open fields, then to winding, dusty roads flanked by ancient trees. The hope, however fragile, that this journey might bring an end to the torment is almost palpable among the accompanying townsfolk. They walk alongside the carts, their own feet tired, their eyes fixed on the distant horizon, where the sacred shrine supposedly awaits. For the dancers, the journey offers no immediate reprieve. They continue their involuntary movements even within the confines of the carts, their bodies bouncing and swaying with the motion of the rough transport. Their minds, already fractured by days of delirium, are perhaps less aware of the physical journey. They are pulled along by the relentless internal compulsion, heading towards a sanctuary they may never truly experience. The road stretches endlessly before them, a path paved with suffering and a desperate, fading hope for a divine intervention. The journey to St. Vitus's shrine is not a cure, but a crucible. For the dancers, already teetering on the brink of collapse, their minds plunge deeper into delirium. You begin to experience their waking nightmares, a shared tapestry of terror woven from exhaustion and fever. The world outside the jolting carts warps and distorts. The trees lining the road seem to twist into menacing figures, their branches like skeletal arms reaching out to grasp at the afflicted. The clouds in the sky coalesce into monstrous faces, howling silent accusations. The low moans and grunts from the masked figures have been replaced by the dancers' own terrified cries, their voices cracking with exhaustion and fear. They shriek at unseen demons, plead with spectral figures, or babble incoherently about fiery pits and whispering shadows. You are trapped within their collective hallucination, unable to escape the terrifying landscape their tormented minds have created. The air, already heavy with the stench of sweat and grime, now feels thick with an almost tangible dread, the byproduct of mass hysteria. A phenomenon often associated with prolonged physical and mental stress, particularly in confined or anxious groups, is mass hallucination or collective delusion, where individuals begin to share elements of an imagined reality. This can be exacerbated by sensory deprivation, or in this case, sensory overload from continuous jarring movement. A particularly unnerving, though less understood detail from some historical accounts of similar outbreaks suggests that the shared hallucinations sometimes incorporated elements of popular religious iconography or local folklore. creating a distorted, nightmarish version of familiar figures or cautionary tales. You might glimpse a familiar saint's face twisting into a demonic grimace, or a beloved folkloric creature morphing into a monstrous tormentor, a terrifying perversion of their own cultural beliefs. Within the carts, the dancers thrash against their companions, convinced they are battling unseen entities. Some attempt to leap out, driven by an urgent need to escape their tormentors, only to be held back by the accompanying guards and family members. Their eyes, once glazed, now burn with a feverish intensity, seeing horrors invisible to the healthy. Their lips move silently, forming words of fear or supplication to phantoms. You feel a profound sense of psychological entanglement, as if their madness is contagious, seeping into your own mind. The relentless internal rhythm that drives their bodies now seems to echo in your own head, a maddening beat that threatens to shatter your last vestiges of sanity. The cries, the visions, the sheer, overwhelming terror. It's a descent into a shared hell, a macabre journey where the line between observer and participant blurs irrevocably. Each bump of the cart, each passing shadow, feeds the escalating terror within the minds of the afflicted, bringing them closer to a final, inevitable breakdown. The sacred grove, the distant shrine, offers no solace. The constant, frenzied movements that began days ago, perhaps weeks, finally begin to exact their ultimate price. You witness the tragic, inevitable surrender of the body. One by one, the dancers begin to falter. Their rhythmic thrashing slows, becoming weaker, more disjointed. The frantic energy that propelled them drains away, leaving behind only profound, bone-deep exhaustion. You see a woman, her face skeletal, her eyes sunken, collapse onto the dusty ground. Her limbs twitch for a few more moments, a desperate echo of the compulsive rhythm, then fall still. Another crumples against a gnarled tree trunk, sliding slowly to the earth, her breath rattling in her chest. The air, once filled with the maddening thud of feet, now carries the sounds of ragged gasps, choked sobs, and eventually, the chilling silence of cessation. A grim reality of prolonged, extreme physical exertion is its devastating impact on the human body, leading to organ failure, dehydration, and cardiac arrest. The dancing plague serves as a stark historical example of this. An especially harrowing detail from chronicles describes victims bleeding from their feet and mouths due to the continuous strain, a testament to the internal devastation their bodies endured. You might imagine faint reddish stains on the ground where some have fallen, silent markers of their final agony. The accompanying townsfolk and the remaining masked figures can do little but watch, helpless witnesses to this mass tragedy. They try to comfort the dying, to offer a final sip of water, but many are too far gone to respond. The sheer scale of the collapse is overwhelming. What started as a few isolated cases has become a field of prone, exhausted bodies, some still, some barely clinging to life. The vibrant, yet terrifying spectacle of the dance gives way to a grim tableau of death and utter depletion. The once frenzied shouts and moans of the dancers are replaced by the quiet weeping of survivors and the somber murmurs of those attending to the dying. The relentless beat that had consumed the town has finally faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. You feel the profound sense of release, not just for the victims, but for the entire community. The torment has ended, but at a terrible cost. The memory of the dance and the faces of those who danced until death will forever be etched into the collective consciousness of the town. This is the moment the bizarre, terrifying performance reaches its grim final curtain. A heavy, unsettling quiet descends upon the town. The relentless thudding, the desperate shrieks, the collective delirium, all have ceased. What remains is a profound silence, broken only by the distant caw of a crow or the mournful sigh of the wind through empty streets. You walk through the marketplace, once the vibrant heart of the town, now a stark tableau of lingering fear and trauma. The cobblestones, once pounded by frenzied feet, seem to absorb the new stillness, reflecting the somber sky. The fear hasn't vanished. It has merely transformed. It's no longer the panic of witnessing an incomprehensible plague, but the chilling dread of memory. The townspeople move with a newfound solemnity, their voices hushed, their eyes often darting towards empty spaces where dancers once writhed. They begin the slow, painful process of tending to the dead, of cleaning the streets, of attempting to piece their shattered lives back together. But the ghost of the dance lingers in every shadow, every quiet corner. A critical aspect of a community recovering from a mass trauma, particularly one as inexplicable as the dancing plague, is the long-term psychological impact on survivors and witnesses. The collective memory of such an event can shape a town's identity for generations. A rarely discussed detail from the aftermath of the dancing plague is the unspoken suspicion that sometimes fell upon the families of the afflicted, even if the victims were not considered culpable. There was an underlying fear that the curse might somehow linger within their lineage, leading to subtle, prolonged social ostracism. You might observe a family, their faces drawn with grief, tending to their fields with a quiet isolation, their neighbors keeping a respectful yet palpable distance. Life slowly, painfully resumes. The baker kneads his dough, the blacksmith rekindles his forge, but the joy, the lightness of being, has been extinguished. Children no longer chase pigeons with the same carefree abandon. Their games are quieter, their laughter less frequent. The marketplace, though once again hosting vendors, now feels like a place haunted by unseen presences. Every sudden movement, every unexpected sound, sends a ripple of unease through the populace. You witness the survivors, their bodies frail, their eyes haunted, carrying the invisible scars of their ordeal. Some bear physical marks, twisted limbs from falls, permanent tremors, or chronic aches that serve as constant reminders. Others carry deeper psychological wounds, their minds forever touched by the delirium they experienced. The town has been irrevocably changed, its innocence stripped away by the bizarre and terrifying visit of the dancing plague. The silence that fills the streets is not peace, but the heavy quiet of a collective breath held, waiting for the past to truly release its grip. The mystery of the dancing plague of 1518, and indeed other similar outbreaks throughout history, continues to baffle historians and scientists alike. You reflect on the various theories proposed over centuries, each attempting to unravel the terrifying enigma you have just witnessed. Some scholars point to ergot poisoning, a fungal contamination of rye bread that can cause convulsions, hallucinations, and intense muscle spasms. This theory holds some weight, as ergotism was a known affliction in medieval Europe, though it doesn't fully explain the specific, sustained nature of the dancing. Another prominent theory suggests mass psychogenic illness, also known as mass hysteria. In this view, extreme stress, fear, and shared anxieties within a community could trigger a collective dissociative state, manifesting as involuntary, widespread physical symptoms. The intense poverty, famine, and disease prevalent in medieval Europe certainly provided a fertile ground for such psychological phenomena. An intriguing yet less proven idea is that some individuals may have initially feigned the dancing, perhaps for attention, or out of a desperate attempt to gain alms, only for their performance to trigger a genuine, uncontrollable response in others, spreading through a form of social contagion. This would add a layer of dark, human complexity to the pure medical or psychological explanations. As centuries passed, the memory of the dancing plague faded from common knowledge, becoming a peculiar footnote in specialized historical texts. Yet, its story occasionally resurfaces, a stark reminder of human vulnerability to both biological agents and the powerful, sometimes destructive, forces of collective belief and fear. The silence that descended upon the streets of that medieval town eventually settled into a historical quiet, punctuated only by the distant whispers of theories and academic debate. You are now far removed from the terror of that July in 1518. The sounds of desperate feet pounding on cobblestones are replaced by the gentle hum of your fan, the heavy scent of fear by the clean air of your room. The images of gaunt, writhing bodies, of bewildered physicians and desperate priests recede into the realm of stories. What remains is a profound sense of the strange journey you've just undertaken through the annals of dark history. The dancing plague serves as a powerful testament to the unknown depths of human psychology and the unforeseen ways in which societal stress can manifest. It's a tale that reminds us that sometimes the greatest horrors are not external monsters, but the inexplicable forces that can grip and compel humanity from within. The knowledge of such events helps us understand the resilience of the human spirit, even when faced with the most bewildering and fatal of circumstances. Now, let your mind drift away from the echoes of that strange, dark history. Feel the tension ease from your body, starting from your toes, moving up through your legs, your chest, and finally releasing from your shoulders and the back of your neck. Take a deep, slow breath in, holding it for a moment, and then slowly exhale, letting go of any lingering thoughts or worries. Imagine yourself floating on a calm, quiet lake, surrounded by soft moonlight. The water is still, reflecting the gentle glow of the stars above. There's nothing to do, nowhere to be, just this moment of peace. Feel the quiet hum of your room, a gentle, soothing presence. Let your eyelids grow heavy, your muscles relax, and your mind grow still. You are safe, you are comfortable, and the journey into the strange past is complete. Drift into a deep, peaceful sleep, knowing that the morning will bring a fresh start. Sweet dreams.